back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time they'll do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rozansky. Coming to you from Freehold, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, usually powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. I am, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rozansky, coming to you here on this Tuesday, the 20th day of January. Hope you're all having a great day. Hope you're all, staying warm out there as we're once again dealing with the effects of winter here on the East Coast. It's funny, I saw a meme or a post on Facebook a couple of days ago perfectly describing the month of January, and it said, January, the month that makes you feel all 31 days. And it's right. I mean, each one of these days, it's not been any form of consistency when it comes to the weather. And hell, you look at this past weekend in sports, it definitely played a big impact when it came to the NFL playoffs and the weather that some of these quarterbacks and some of these players in general had to play through. We'll give you a lot of thoughts on the NFL playoffs today, give some thoughts on the college football national championship game that took place last night. That's why I wanted to wait till today to do the podcast rather than yesterday and then have to wait a full week to react to the national championship game. Also, we're seeing some hirings and some new openings come up when it comes to the coaching searches in the NFL. So I'll have some opinions on that, mixing some baseball later on as well. But football is going to be the prevailing thought of the day as we're really in the final two real weekends of the NFL season or the football season in general. This past weekend truly felt like that last real weekend when it comes to, you have the two conference championship games coming up this Sunday. But then after that, you get a 2-week layoff before the Super Bowl. This past weekend, you had 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. Then you throw in a national championship game in college football on Monday night, our last Monday night football game until next September. So it kind of was like the beginning of the end here. But as a football fan, no matter who you root for, it's a time of the year you look forward to, especially if you're someone like me who roots for a team that is absolute garbage and has been in the doldrums for the last 15 years. And especially when you're a Jet fan like myself, you really have only one thing to root for in this postseason, and that's rooting against your division opponents, the Bills and the Patriots. Now, while you were done no favors whatsoever by the Houston Texans over the weekend, at least you got to sit there and have a smile on your face Saturday afternoon into evening as you watched another painful, pitiful ending of the year for the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills have had the kind of success that I could only wish for as a fan in recent years. They, prior to this year, have dominated by and large part the AFC East until you've seen this very unfair reawakening of the New England Patriots. I mean, it's ridiculous. They go through that 20-year stretch of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, have, 3, maybe 4 down years, and all of a sudden Drake May and Mike Vrabel have turned the entire thing around. I mean, go figure on that one. But for the last 5 years, the Buffalo Bills have dominated the AFC East and have done everything but one thing, and that was get to Super Bowl Sunday. And this year, more than any other year, was their greatest opportunity. You had a postseason that did not include Patrick Mahomes, did not include Lamar Jackson, did not include Joe Burrow. And when you look at the quarterbacks of the other 6 teams combined, they had nowhere near the postseason experience of Josh Allen, who we hold to a different standard. We hold to a different level. All of these other quarterbacks, you win a postseason game, it's hurrah, yay, good for them. Their first postseason win. For Josh Allen, it's, all right, where's your Super Bowl championship? And fair or unfair, that's the standard he gets held to now. He's arguably the best quarterback in the sport. The only thing that has held him back, the only crowning achievement he has left in his still young career, I mean, he hasn't even turned 30 yet, is winning that championship, is getting to Super Bowl Sunday. But you had, once again, a miserable ending for the Buffalo Bills. And, one of the worst kind of losses in sports, I mean, there's plenty of bad losses. There's just getting your doors blown off and known it's over from the beginning. We've seen that in this postseason. There's that loss where you're leading the entire way, and then you blow the lead late in the game, and the opposition wins in overtime or at the final second. Or there's the loss like what the Bills had on Saturday, where they were trailing by 2 scores at halftime and then fought all the way back. You had the Broncos not doing anything offensively to speak of in the third quarter, large portions of the fourth. You're seeing Josh Allen and this offense wake up after playing hot potato with the football for the majority of the first 3 quarters of this game. They have a lead late into the fourth quarter, and then Bo Nix and company roll right on back through, take a lead late. They managed to get a field goal to force overtime. And then came, once again, those moments where Buffalo Bill fans are looking up saying, why us? Why are we the ones that have to deal with this? Is there some kind of hex on us? Does the NFL have it out for us? Or are we just never going to truly accomplish the dream of winning that elusive Super Bowl that our franchise has never been able to top? That Super Bowl that is the one thing missing on the mantle. And you've heard over the last 3 days since the Bills lost this game, a lot of crying, complaining from Bills fans. You've heard a lot of excuses from Bills players. Hell, you saw comments from the now former head coach of the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott. And he's right to have a bit of a beef with this. The moment that you're going to think about from that game, when Jaquan McMillan rips the ball out of Brandon Cook's hands. To me, watching it live, I thought it was interception and that Brandon Cooks never truly completed a football play. But Brandon Cooks has himself to blame a lot for this, because if he truly thought, as he said after the game, that he made a catch and that it wasn't an interception, then wouldn't you be jumping up, screaming at the referees? Wouldn't you be making more of a scene of it? Instead, he's on all fours. He's in a fetal position. You're thinking for a second there that, maybe is this guy injured? Maybe is this guy get hurt on the play? So he did not sell that all too well. But I do agree with Sean McDermott that it felt like the whole situation was rushed. It felt like they didn't really take the time to review this, even though in overtime, all replay reviews are automatically called from New York. There's no challenges that you can throw. Doesn't matter if you call a timeout in that spot. And you heard from the referee telling a pool reporter after the game that the receiver has to complete the process of a catch. We've been told this time and time again. He made no true football movement. He didn't survive the ground with the football, especially when he's hitting the ground and his opponent is ripping the ball out of his hands before he truly had the wherewithal to pull the football in. And it was just amongst those many moments that Bill fans are going to look back on and say what could have been between that or Bo Nix later on in that following drive, throwing the deep pass to Marvin Mims that got called for pass interference. And to be fair, there probably should have been a pass interference penalty that was called late in that game against the Broncos that wasn't on that final play by Allen in regulation before they set up for the game-tying field goal. All of this complaining by the Bills fans, by Bills players, really, you have yourselves to look in the mirror for it, because you turned the football over on 5 separate occasions in that game, including the worst of them all. The one that you really have to wonder what the hell you're thinking. Right before halftime, you got the football on your own 30-yard line, 16 seconds to go, no timeouts. And as amazing as Josh Allen is there, he's got to have a little bit of a realization saying, do anything but turn over the football here. Yeah, scramble, maybe slide late, maybe I can draw a penalty there. But his protection of the football was very careless. He lets up the fumble there that allowed the Broncos to get a field goal that, rather than have just a 7-point lead going into the break, take a 10-point lead going into the break. And it forced you to play uphill for most of that second half. Now, yes, there should have been a pass interference penalty called on that final drive when Dawson Knox, it looked like he got held up in the end zone. But there's no arguing those 2 pass interference penalties that were called against Buffalo in overtime, especially the one that was thrown on the pass to Marvin Mims. I mean, the defender's not even looking back for the football. But if you're a Bronco fan, how much of a deflator must that feel? You win that game, and then immediately after the game, you find out that you've lost your quarterback for the season as Bo Nix fractured a bone in his ankle and had surgery today, is going to miss the rest of this season. And now you're relying on Jarrett Stidham, who hasn't taken a snap in a real game in about 3 years, to carry you to the finish line. And that is a real bummer. That is one of those where you're like, wow, we have this amazing season. We're the 1 seed. We overcome Mahomes and the Chiefs, overcome Harbaugh, Herbert, and the Chargers, and we get home field advantage throughout the postseason. And still, even when things look like they're going our way, now we lose our young stud quarterback for the remainder of the year, going up against a tough New England Patriots team this Sunday at home in the AFC Championship. But back to the Bills, and the Bills have no one but themselves to blame. Their fans can cry and complain all they want, but it's not going to do you any good. I have a brief bit of sympathy for Josh Allen, although when you look at his career, one thing that is very damning against him is he can't seem to win an overtime game to save his life. 0-7 now, and he's the reason that they changed the overtime rules. Remember, they wanted to, after that 13-second game against the Chiefs in the postseason a couple years ago, make sure that both teams were able to get the ball in overtime, and still he can't find a way to win an overtime game to save his damn life. And what has it done now? It's cost his head coach his job. Because you look at the history of this sport when it comes to head coach quarterback pairings. And the head coach quarterback pairings that have won Super Bowls, all of them have done it within the first 5 years of them being together. You can go back, fact check that. Every head coach quarterback combo that has won a Super Bowl has done it within their first 5 years together. Sean McDermott had been there for 9 seasons, did a remarkable job, unlike what their ownership mistakenly said in their statement about him yesterday, saying he did an admirable job. And maybe you want to do a little word check there before you put out a statement, Terry Pagula. But he got them over an 18-year hurdle of not making the postseason. They won more games than any team in the league over a 7-year stretch. They won the division 5 consecutive years. But when you win and win and win, expectations begin to rise. You no longer go from being that cute story. You no longer are that fun ride that everyone is backing. You become a team with expectations. You become a team where you say, all right, what do you got for us now? We've seen that you can make the postseason. You got to win a championship, especially when you have a quarterback as talented as Josh Allen. And like I said before, I have a bit of sympathy for him, considering you only get one crack at this thing. Coaches have a longer lifespan in these sports than do players. Players, if you're lucky, you get a 20-year career. Usually only the immortals get that. Large majority of them have shorter careers than that, and you have a certain window in which you can win it. You have a certain window where you can accomplish things because you're at the height of your superpowers. So you can see the emotion and all of the heartbreak of years upon years of failures in the postseason starting to get to Josh Allen. So I can sympathize for him there a bit, and sympathize for Sean McDermott because he did a really good job there, but now you need someone that can cross over the finish line, and he's been there long enough where just making the postseason and winning a round is not good enough, especially in a year that we saw. But I have no sympathy for Bills Mafia. I have no sympathy for that loudmouth Deion Dawkins, even as great a player as he is. That guy's never seen a microphone or a podcast that he didn't want to run his mouth on. So for as much as you want to cry and complain about the catch that wasn't a catch, that was an interception, maybe you should be looking at your team and realizing you threw that game away by having an awful first half offensively, turning the ball over left and right, your quarterback committing 4 turnovers in his own right, including a god-awful fumble that you would think not even a rookie would commit, and having to play uphill all day long against a defense that, while is a bit overrated for my taking, is still going to muster up a strong effort in their own house. And, with Mahomes coming back next year, Joe Burrow still be in the midst of his prime, same with Lamar Jackson, this was the best opportunity you were probably ever going to have an easy road through the AFC during the Josh Allen era. All right, a lot I want to get to throughout this podcast. Like I said, give you some thoughts on the NFC side of the postseason coming up. I'll mix in some thoughts on the College Football National Championship, some baseball thoughts, as well as the Giants finally hiring John Harbaugh as their new head coach. So a lot to get into over the next about 45 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me this week. And as I tell you each and every single week at this time, please sit back, relax, help put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
In all seriousness, what the hell was that from the Houston Texans on Sunday? Now, I fully expected that I wasn't going to completely get my wish of both teams out of the AFC East getting knocked off in this same weekend. And as good as the Texan defense is, as great as the Texan defense is, they have studs on all three levels of that defense. I was under no grand illusions that CJ Stroud was going to easily roll into Foxborough and knock off the Patriots after the magical season that they've had, even albeit one of the easiest routes that we have ever seen a team have to get to a conference championship, with the fact that they had an extremely easy regular season schedule, got to take on a Chargers team that was missing members of their offensive line, especially both tackles, and playing a Texans team that had a lot of injuries without Nico Collins due to concussion protocol. They were without right tackle Trent Brown and had to reconfigure things on their offensive line. Even lost Dalton Schultz during this game to a calf injury. But all of that is no excuse for why CJ Stroud should have been playing hot potato with the football, throwing 4 interceptions in the first half, including one in which he's running backwards, trying to avoid a sack, and just decides to loft it up into the air for Jones to easily pick off to bring back to the house for a touchdown. I mean, you're watching this, you're like, you gotta be freaking kidding me here. And the fact that D'Amico Ryans not even one time thought about pulling this kid and going to the backup, at least giving your team an opportunity. Because your defense, even despite all these turnovers, was keeping you in the game. I mean, Drake May wasn't as protective of the football either. Had that Hail Mary interception at the end of the first half. He was fumbling the football, lost 2 of the 4 fumbles he had throughout the game. You were staying within striking distance. But at some point, you knew, as great as that defense was, that the dam was going to break, and eventually they were not going to be able to hold up. And you really gave your team no shot to win that game. Hell, D'Amico Ryans essentially gave up on this game late in the game. And I get it. You're down by 12 points on the road. It's late in the fourth quarter. And you got a 4th and 18 at your own 21-yard line. But you're punting the football away with 4 minutes to go when you're down by 2 scores? Did you really think you were going to force another fumble there? And now there's got to be some soul searching there within the Texans organization, because CJ Stroud this last 2 years has not looked like the promising star that he was in his rookie season. You've had so much change in that coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of things, and he has seemed to struggle now with the multiple different coordinators on that staff. So you're going into an off season now where you really begin to wonder, is CJ truly our guy that you want to commit to over the long term? Now, on the NFC side of things, there's really no reason to talk about Seahawks 49ers. This was a beatdown from the get-go. And there's nothing from this that you really take away from it other than saying Seattle was the truly more dominant team, other than the fact that I do want to give the 49ers credit for even getting to this spot. Most teams losing your star tight end, having wide receivers on the IR all throughout the year, being without your quarterback for 6 games, losing your 2 leaders on defense, wouldn't even sniff the postseason. And all of that is reasons why Kyle Shanahan will and should easily run away with the Coach of the Year honors on the week of the Super Bowl. The job that he did this year was truly remarkable, and you can't give him enough credit for that. But if you're the Seahawks, this win comes at a cost. Not at the cost of anyone on your defense, not at the cost of your quarterback like what happened with the Denver Broncos, but you lose your lead running back in Zach Charbonnet for the season as he went down with a torn ACL in the second quarter. He was your leader rusher on this team. He had led what was a great tandem there between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker III, and why you were one of the best ground attacks in the sport this season. And sure, you've got some other guys in there, including Cam Akers on that depth chart. But no one's going to come in and match the productivity. Now you're going to be putting even more of a credence, even more weight on the shoulders of Kenneth Walker as you go into a matchup against your division rival, against the team that you are seeing for a third time in the Los Angeles Rams. And I've got to be honest with you here. I did not think we were going to be seeing Seahawks Rams for a third time this season, especially at around 9:30 on Sunday night when the play heard around the world occurred. A play that, if the Bears had won this game, it would have gone down in the annals of NFL lore as one of the craziest, wildest plays in NFL history. And you've got Caleb Williams backing up on a 4th and 4 from his own 14-yard line. And it, in the end, essentially turns into about a 50-yard lob into the end zone, where you have Cole Kmet able to break loose of the defender to catch the game-tying touchdown. Like, how does this shit keep happening with the Bears? How do they keep having these wild moments after wild moments after wild moments this year? I mean, you have, usually, if you're lucky, one of those kind of games on any given season. But to have 7 games, including the postseason, in which you come back when trailing in the final 2 minutes of the game, is absolutely remarkable. But unfortunately for them, their magic ran out in overtime. The clock struck midnight when Caleb Williams got picked off by Cam Curl, and I don't even blame Caleb on that play. Let me correct myself. I don't blame him for the read on that play. I more so blame DJ Moore for looking like he pulled up on the play a bit there. What I do blame Caleb Williams for is his over-aggressiveness, the fact that you just converted a 4th and 1. You're about 15 yards away from reasonable field goal position to win this game. And instead, you're trying to go for a home run shot rather than a simple check down to your tight end or check down to the slot receiver that would have gotten you closer to Cairo Santos having a reasonable shot at a game-winning field goal. You've got to think that the Rams are both physically gassed as well as emotionally gassed after that game-tying touchdown at the end of regulation. And I can somewhat understand the idea from Ben Johnson to not go for the 2-point conversion there. But when you've been as aggressive as he is and have shown as much moxie as he has during this season, that was probably the time, if you were ever going to say F it and say, let's just go for it, do or die right here, right now, that was probably the moment to do so. Caleb Williams got way too aggressive trying to go down the field. DJ Moore gave up on the play. At least that's what it looks like to the naked eye. And Cam Curl made the right read on it. Him getting that interception set up the Rams for a go-ahead game-winning field goal. And now they move on to a third matchup with the Seattle Seahawks this coming Sunday. And let me correct something I said earlier. I said as a Jet fan that the lone thing I have to root for in this postseason remaining is the elimination of the Jets' division rivals. That's not true. I am 100% rooting for Sam Darnold to lead the Seattle Seahawks to a Super Bowl championship. It's not his fault things didn't work out here in New York with the Jets. It's not his fault that the Jets brass never put together a solid offensive line to protect him in his 3 years here, whether it be Joe Douglas or the regime led by Adam Gase before him. It's not his fault that his best wide receiver during that time was Robbie Anderson, who never ran routes, and he was never fortunate to have Garrett Wilson or the luxury that he has now with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He now has a real head coach, a real defense around him, a solid offensive line, great weapons, albeit now losing one of, if not his best running back for the season. And yes, you're going up against a team for the third time, but you're in your building. And you've heard how loud that place can be in the postseason. Hell, you saw it on Saturday night once again when Rashid Shaheed took back the opening kickoff to get the festivities started. This is your time, Sam. Go get it done. Go show these other teams what they're missing out on, whether it be the Jets, the Vikings, anybody else that you had previously played for, and prove all of the naysayers and haters wrong, that you can be more than just a passenger on a team en route to winning a championship.
I'll be back.
That was a really fun game to close out the college football season last night in the national championship between Indiana and Miami. Now, college football does need to fix it. I don't think you should be having your national championship game on January 19th. And as I've explained before, there's way too much time off for these teams that have the first round byes. But you got what was the top team all season long versus a Miami program that had not been in a position like this in almost 25 years. And although Miami made a lot of mistakes early on in this game, whether it be the pass interference penalty on the third down, and then a couple of plays later, Ruben Bain gets called for an offsides, both of which were on third downs, and extended that drive, leading to the Hoosiers' first touchdown of the game. You saw a game here that was as competitive and as fierce as you could possibly ask for. Now, Mendoza, his numbers overall are not eye-popping, but he made the plays necessary when he had to win this game. And that's all you can ask for from your stud Heisman winning quarterback. You're not asking him every time to put on the Superman cape and go out there and throw for 400 yards, but you're asking to do what it takes to win the game, especially the guts of Kirk Cignetti to call for them going for it on 2 4th downs on that drive in the fourth quarter, including the one that ultimately put them up by enough to hold on against Miami when, if you're of a certain age, you had flashbacks to Super Bowl 32 and flashbacks to Andrew Luck in college as you're watching Mendoza break through the defense and dive into the end zone for that touchdown in the fourth quarter. Just some really cool, very fun stuff. And you took two things away from this. A, Miami is back as a program. It's back as a destination place for kids to want to come to, as far as saying, hey, I can win there. I can make a difference. I can reach the big stage there. I mean, Mario Cristobal has got this team in a really, really good place. But if you're a fan of Indiana or a fan of anybody that is not one of the premier programs in the sport, because remember, before Cignetti took over, Indiana historically was one of the worst programs in not just all of college football, but all of college sports. They still have one of, prior to this year, the losingest records in the history of college football. But if you have the right boosters, if you have the right NIL deals following you, you don't need the 4 and 5 star athletes. Get the right coach, have the right amount of boosters in there. And next year, you can look up and say, hey, why not us? Indiana did it. Why can't we do it? Because you're seeing here, the SEC, they're not the big dogs anymore. They're not the top guns here. It's been a while since they've won a national championship. The last 3 national champions are out of the Big Ten. It's been a while since Alabama dominated this sport. LSU is jumping around the coaches left and right. The best program in the SEC at the end of the day this year turned out to be Ole Miss. They got the furthest of everybody, and they're in a world of upheaval right now because they don't know if they're going to have their quarterback going into next year, and they don't know who's going to be on their coaching staff. So it's a wide open race in college football right now. Well, if you're a program, if you're one of these schools, say you're a traditional basketball powerhouse school, or a school that has been in the doldrums, or a school that's not in the Big Ten or the SEC, you have the right people backing you. You can get the right recruits, the right people through the transfer portal. Why can't you be in this position next year like Indiana was. There's a lot of optimism flowing through college sports right now, especially now after Indiana doing the unlikely, winning a national championship as a 16-0 program. Now, there's a lot of upheaval in the NFL as we speak. Outside of the NFL postseason, you've had as many as 10 head coaching openings so far in this cycle. That's more than we're typically seeing. Usually you'll get somewhere in that 6 to 8 range, but 10 openings. And not all of these are bad jobs. Not all of these are situations where the team's just been total crap and you had a head coach that was underperforming. You have Buffalo opening up. You had both the Steelers and Ravens open up, which is a rarity. And I'm not surprised by Mike Tomlin stepping away. Hell, I would have been shocked if he continued on with the look that he had on the sidelines near the end of the game against the Texans, with how long he's been doing that and how they've not had much success in recent years in the postseason. Aaron Rodgers getting up there in age and likely retiring, that defense getting older, and them not having that true next answer at quarterback and seemingly refusing to go through the ways of a rebuild. It was starting to wear on him. Hell, the disrespect of that fan base in week 13 chanting, "Fire Tomlin." He's going to take a year off and come back refreshed, and it won't surprise me in a year or two you see him back on another sidelines leading a team to success and trying to get back to the heights that he was once at with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you've seen some other coaches jump right back into it. That's why it won't surprise me if Sean McDermott eventually in this cycle gets another one of these jobs. Now, as a guy that was just fired from a spot where he had arguably the best quarterback in the league, he's going to be very picky about his next spot. He's not going to just go to some rebuild. He's going to want to go somewhere where he can be successful right away. So it's either he takes one of the 6 remaining openings or jumps into it again next year after a bye year, like what you saw Mike McCarthy do this past year. But in the last week, we've seen the Titans hire Robert Saleh as their new head coach. Well-deserved. He deserved a second chance. Hopefully, he shows more personality this time. The Falcons hire Kevin Stefanski, which I get it. Kevin Stefanski's a good offensive mind, but you hope that he's able to get the quarterback situation figured out in Atlanta. A spot where you have Kirk Cousins on his last leg. Michael Penix can't seem to keep a leg healthy. And he just dealt with a place in Cleveland that seemingly had more quarterback turnover than the rest of the league combined over the last 6 years. It's remarkable that he was able to even get to the postseason on multiple occasions, be coach of the year on multiple years, with all of the guys that he had coming and going in the quarterback spot there in Cleveland, starting with Baker Mayfield and finishing up with Shedeur Sanders. But of course, the real highlight for all of us in this area is the hiring by the Giants of John Harbaugh as their new head coach. And you could feel it over the weekend. You could feel some pessimism. You could feel some nervousness from Giant fans because there were the reports breaking loose late Thursday night that John Harbaugh and the Giants were beginning to come to terms, reach the final landing spot on naming him the new head coach. But then you were also hearing rumors and rumblings that his agent was still talking to the Tennessee Titans, that his agent was still planning on a meeting with the Atlanta Falcons. And it took Chris Mara having a second meeting with John Harbaugh, as well as John Mara. And we wish him well with what he's going through in his fight with cancer, stepping in on Saturday afternoon to really put the final nail in this, in John Harbaugh becoming their head coach. And this is the kind of guy that the Giants need, because the Giants, since the Tom Coughlin era, have been a rudderless ship. Yeah, you've had head coaches come in here, but none of them lasted more than 3 years at the most. And none of these guys showed leadership. None of these guys were showing a full control of the organization. You had a lot of immaturity that was breaking loose here with the Giants. You had, 2 playoff years in a decade span, and a lot of losing along the way, and a lot of off the field embarrassing things, not just when it comes to the players, but also with the way that general managers were handling things with certain draft picks and with how they handled free agency. But now you get John Harbaugh in here, who he essentially is running the show here. When you see the fact that he doesn't report to Joe Schoen, he reports to the Mara and Tisch family. He will have the choice in reshaping the Giants' analytics, scouting, medical, and media departments. He's going to get the final say on draft day if there's a tie between him and Joe Schoen when it comes to choosing a player and who fits their system and who doesn't. And you're not going to see some of the nonsense that took place this past year under Brian Daboll. You're not going to see crap where you're having players falling asleep during team meetings. You're not going to see nonsense where guys are constantly late to team meetings and thinking that, oh, I'll be late or fall asleep during a meeting or even watch inappropriate stuff on my phone during team meetings and just miss a quarter of the game action. No, that's not going to fly with John Harbaugh. Maybe that was allowed to go on with Joe Douglas and previous regimes, but he's going to hold players accountable, especially in that defensive room where it felt like, other than Brian Burns, you had a bunch of children that were running around doing whatever the hell they wanted, with not just being late to team meetings, but being more concerned about their social media and YouTube accounts and pointing at you, Dexter Lawrence. And then all of the crap that Abdul Carter was allowed to get away with throughout this year. And maybe he'll finally motivate Kayvon Thibodeau as he's going into a rather important financial year for himself. So it's going to be his way or the highway when it comes to John Harbaugh, the kind of leadership that this team has lacked for a very long time. Now, John Harbaugh doesn't come without his own warrants, and this is a guy that in the last 5 years has had more blown double-digit leads in the fourth quarter than any coach in the league. And the Giants, they made a habit of blowing fourth quarter double-digit leads throughout this season. But maybe this is the perfect marriage that these two sides needed. Because when you're in one place for a long time, I don't want to say you get bored or you get too comfortable, but maybe a change of scenery refreshes him, recharges the batteries here. Especially now you have a young, looks like franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart, who you've got to really key into his head that he's got to stay out of the blue medical tent. But you got a guy that you look like you can be successful with for a long time to come. You've got pieces on this roster that you look like you can be successful with immediately. And depending on how things break when it comes to cutting guys when the new league year comes, you could have a decent amount of cap room to do some things and bring in the right depth pieces, especially at tight end, the right side of your offensive line, and in your secondary. So things are starting to look up if you're a member of the Giants and if you're a Giants fan, something you have not been able to say for a very long time.
I'll be back.
I am by no means surprised by the decision that Dante Moore made last week to return to college. I thought he would have been coming out way too soon. And I'm not just basing that on his struggles in his last game in college against Indiana, but this kid is 20 years old. He's made less than 20 starts in his college career. Now, yeah, he's taken a big gamble by coming back to school, because you look at last year's number 2 overall draft pick, Travis Hunter, and that's where Moore probably would have been projected in all of the mock drafts, because we know Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1 overall. But if he would have came out in this draft and gotten selected number 2 overall, he could have made nearly $50 million, especially when you look at what Travis Hunter got, about $47 million fully guaranteed as the number 2 overall pick in last year's draft. And I don't care that Dylan Raiola had just announced he was transferring to Oregon, or the fact that some of the players, including tight end Kenyon Sadai, are going to the NFL. Moore had a good season this past year, but did not have the kind of season where you look at him and say, far and away, oh, that's a ready-made NFL prospect. 20 years old, no one's ready for the league, especially when you have the amount of starts that he's made. Most draft evaluators look at the line of demarcation as somewhere around 25 to 30 starts for what they like to see out of a ready-made NFL prospect. And we've seen plenty of other players go back even when it looked like they could potentially come out in the draft, whether it be Andrew Luck or Matt Leinart. So to me, and I'm not just saying this as a Jet fan who thought it would have been a mistake for the Jets selecting him at 2 overall, or thought this could have been another Zach Wilson situation. I'm saying this for the kid's own good. He needs more time. He has some things to work on. He needs to build a little more body strength, because he does look like, even at 6'3", kind of a slenderish small guy. And next year, hopefully once he builds that all up and gets more of a year of experience, he'll be a more ready prospect for the NFL. Now, as the football season starts to fade away on us, we draw closer and closer to the baseball season springing upon us, although it doesn't feel like spring outside. But we're, less than 4 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. And now you're starting to see some players get a little bit nervous here when it comes to free agency, starting to make some decisions rather than looking for those long-term secure contracts, looking for maybe some shorter deals where it provides the opportunity to opt out and maybe get another crack at free agency in a year or two, including in the last week, both Bo Bichette and Kyle Tucker making decisions on where they would end up. And in the case of Kyle Tucker, I just quite frankly don't understand how the Dodgers can fit him in. Not how they can fit him in financially, because they have the richest owners in the sport, because it's not like they just have one person running the team or one family. They have multiple people running this as a hedge fund group and are making dollars upon dollars, millions upon millions with all of the advertised money that's coming in across seas for the likes of Shohei Ohtani, and the hedge funds that they start for all of these players with the deferrals that they're taking in their contracts. How do they have roster spots available for all of these guys? Because now with Kyle Tucker coming in, you're going to be moving around that outfield a little bit. You're going to shift Teoscar Hernandez from right to left. Going to have Andy Pajas in center. Move Tommy Edman to second base. Now that's a guarantee that Mookie Betts is going to remain at shortstop. And at some point, you run out of spots to play everybody. And that's not even accounting all the guys that they're signed in that pitching rotation right now. With adding Edwin Diaz to that bullpen, you've got Ohtani, you got Glasnow, you got Blake Snell, Sasaki, Yamamoto. All of these guys are taking some form of a deferral-laden contract. And while I will say this to fans out there, don't be mad at the Dodgers because they are following the rules that are currently constituted in this sport. Be mad at your owners for the fact that they're not figuring out creative ways to do things like this. At the same time, though, I've said for a while, there should be some kind of ruling, some kind of reining in when it comes to these deferral contracts. Because I guarantee when they made these rules on deferral payments, they did not make it with the intention of someone signing a 10-year, $700 million contract that was going to be paying them $68 million per year in their 40s, and they would only have a base salary of $2 million per year off of that. There's got to be something where it's somewhere along the lines of at least 50% of your contract, or you have to have a contract that is at least $30 million per year, and you do deferral payments. Although the Dodgers would still try to figure out a way around that. I mean, you see what they're doing with Kyle Tucker. They gave him 4 years for $240 million. There's no way Kyle Tucker is worth $60 million per season. He's not worth more than Juan Soto or Aaron Judge or Mookie Betts. He's a good player, but come on now. We're getting a little bit outrageous here with what they're throwing at some of these guys, even with the deferrals in those contracts. And some of these fan bases are right to feel like they have no shot. They have no chance going into this season, going up against the Dodgers, because their ownership is just pretty much laughing at the fact that they have the highest luxury threshold, laughing at the fact that they're going to be paying 110% on the dollar for all of this, including the fact that Tucker is going to cost them annually about $119.9 million when you include the luxury tax. So there's got to be something in the next CBA that reins this all in. Not saying that I want a salary cap, but at the same time, you can't have all of these players just constantly taking deferred payments and it keeping you under or near the threshold, especially when you have one guy who, without deferrals, would have a $70 million per year contract, one that would have a $60 million per year contract, the likes of Betts and Freeman probably making close to $30 million per, at least 3 starting pitchers making $25 to $30 million per. I mean, somewhere along the way, even they've got to think this is a bit ridiculous, and they have got to be reined in just a little bit. And it's got to annoy Met fans, the fact that they were not able to reel in Kyle Tucker, who would have probably fit them perfectly, because then you could potentially either move Juan Soto to left field and put Tucker right, or put Tucker in left, and then you could have one of these young outfield prospects that you're talking about available as a chip to use in a trade to go get a pitcher. But what's also annoying is when you see your owner, Steve Cohen, putting out these cryptic tweets like late Thursday night in reference to the Pope, when around 7 o'clock he tweets out, quote, "Let me know when you see smoke." And then you don't even get the big fish that Met fans were hoping you'd get, and you have to essentially go into panic mode to go sign Bo Bichette. And Bo Bichette, I like him as a player. He's a really good offensive infielder. But signing Bo Bichette kind of makes it look like complete hypocrites compared to what you've been saying all off season long. Because you came into this off season with your general manager, David Stern, saying that there was going to be a focus on improving run prevention, whether that be upgrades in the pitching rotation and improvements on your defense. Well, let's see. So far, you've made no upgrades on your pitching rotation. You still go into the season with a rotation that projects to be David Peterson, Clay Holmes, 3 young pitchers along with Sean Manaea, a bullpen that does not have the best closer in baseball in it anymore in Edwin Diaz, and you replace him with 2 former Yankee closers in Devin Williams and Luke Weaver. And then there's the fact that you trade away or let go some longtime Met fan favorites in Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, and Pete Alonso, and you harp on upgrading defensively. But how have you replaced them? You bring in Bo Bichette, who was not a good defensive shortstop last year, and now you're going to be moving him to a position that he's never played in the majors before in third base. And your replacement at first base is Jorge Polanco, who's never played first base in the big leagues before. So now you've weakened yourself at the 2 corner infield positions, and you want to still talk about run prevention and upgrading defensively. Yeah, nice job, David Stearns. You've not made Met fans happy so far. This was a panic move. This was not a let's go out there and upgrade the infield move. You upgraded the infield offensively, yes, because you've seen Jeff McNeil make a bit of a downturn in the last couple of years. But you've not replaced the power that was left behind by letting Pete Alonso walk out the door and go to the Baltimore Orioles. You've not yet replaced the consistency that Brandon Nimmo had brought to you in the outfield in recent years, although injuries had started to pile up on him, and he was probably getting closer to being a DH. You're looking at a lineup right now with Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and a lot of question marks, both offensively and defensively. So this is a team that has had a very confusing offseason. To me, the only way that you can really say you improve things defensively is if you go out there and you sign Cody Bellinger. Because Cody Bellinger, you can stick him at first base. Unlike Polanco, he has played first base and played it at a reasonable level. And you still have him available as an outfield option potentially as well. Or go out there, make a trade with one of these young pitchers, take one of these abundance of young infielders you have, and go get David Stern's former draft pick in Freddie Peralta from the Milwaukee Brewers. That is the kind of things that improve run prevention. That is the kind of things that improve defense. That is the kind of things that can improve this pitching staff. So far, it looks like you've done really nothing but try to cave in to Met fans' pressure. And they've got every right to come down hard on you guys. You had an owner that called out the fans last year, a GM that comes with a strong reputation, and you went out and signed the biggest fish in free agency last offseason and failed to make the postseason with just 83 measly wins. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. Everybody, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Remember, folks, you get one life, so you might as well try to live it up to the fullest. And I'll talk to you guys again sometime next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave.
I'll be back.